Yeah.
This one, now
Chat Night Africa. Welcome to Chat Night. Yeah. Chat Night Africa. Oh, Gaia. Welcome to Chat Night. We bring you good vibe. We shine on the light. Welcome to Chat Night. We bring you good vibe. We shine on the light. We all over the world. Chat Night Africa. Chat Night Africa. We all over the world. Chat Night Africa. Welcome to Chat Night. We bring you good vibe. We shine on the light. Welcome to Chat Night. We bring you good vibe. We shine on the light. We all over the world. Chat Night Africa. Chat Night Africa. We all over the world. Chat Night Africa. Chat Night Africa. Welcome to Chat Night. The only place that we give you good vibes. Chat Night Africa. Welcome to Chat Night. All over the world we are shining the light. Chat Night Africa. Welcome to Chat Night. It's not only for Africans. Chat Night Africa. Welcome to Chat Night. Promoting the culture of Africa. Chat Night Africa. This is the voice of Africa to the world. Africa's platform to be heard.
Chat Night Africa. Let's gang up, change mindset, and empower Africans. Are you ready? Africa to the world.
Not too long ago, an African in the state of Ohio in the United States strangulated his wife and set the house ablaze. By the time the rescuers arrived, it was too late to save her. Many of such incidents happen, and frequently, unfortunately. Somebody just doesn't get up and commit such heinous act. Unresolved conflict culminates in built-up anger. Today on Voices of Africa, communication and the trust factor as tools for turning love relationship conflict into a gift. Your boyfriend, girlfriend, or spouse may be cute. Unfortunately, we are all bundles of flaws. So, how prepared are you to handle conflicts before someone snaps? While you think you can never find yourself on the brink, those who did never planned to get to that point. On the show this week, we'll provide the tools for conflict management and or resolution. Connecting now live from London is Coach BK. Coach BK, my first question to you is, in what ways is communication and or trust foundational to averting or managing conflict in love relationship?
Okay, so I like the analogy that you just gave. You know, in property, we talk about location, location, and location. In relationships, I talk about blind spots, and blind spots. If we can take that out of the equation, we find ourselves in a place, the place where we should and ought to be in order to take that relationship where it needs to go. You see, communication is that thing that defines, refines, and streamlines the connection that exists between two people. I talked about blind spots. Now, I'd like to add to that the following. Life is a journey of self-discovery. And all the people, places, and things in our surroundings pretty much aid and abet us on that journey if only we would realize that the purpose of these engagements and interactions, our relations, verbal elating with all the people that we embrace and interact with is for one purpose and one purpose only. To get us to a place of enlightenment so we can find, be, and own our light. And from that place of being, we can self-actualize. Let me give you a couple of analogies. You know, if you jump into your car, generally, I believe you jump into your car because you want to go someplace. So there is a destination deep down. There are bearings, someplace you're looking to go. Now, as you journey from point A to point B, you will meet obstacles. You will meet challenges that you will have to navigate on the one hand, circumnavigate on the other. And guess what? As you go through these ups and downs, as you meet and greet these challenges and circumnavigate them, some of them will be stop signs, traffic lights. Some of them will be don't go left, don't go right. And guess what? We follow these signs. We do not second guess them. We just do as we're told because we know the terms of engagement. Above and beyond these standard general obstacles, the ones that we can see, identify, and avoid, and the ones that we can leverage, there is one that we usually do not see, and that's the blind spot. But for that, we have got a blind spot mirror that helps us on that journey. So this is the first place in life where we get to engage. This is one place in life where we get to engage blind spots. Now take education. It doesn't matter whether it is formal education or informal education. It doesn't matter whether you have been to or seen the four walls of a room. Some of the most intelligent people I know have not been to school. Just to make that distinction. But you realize that even with education, there is a curriculum. And for those who learn by doing, there is a feedback mechanism. You talk to whatever it is you're doing, you try. You stumble, you fall, you become good at it, then you excel, and that is how you make it. What do you see here? You notice that you have to be humble. You have to put in effort. You have to be selfless. You have to be determined. You have to be vulnerable. And when you put all these things together, you meet, discover, greet, and embrace your potential converted into ability. Come to the self in a relation. See, because we're talking about relationships. In order for you to relate with someone else, you need to know how to relate with yourself. And this is where self-control kicks in. How does it work? You get to discover who you are by discovering your interests. So it is important to have hobbies. Because that's the first time you get to talk to yourself. You get to meet these challenges. You discover the things that you love. You discover the things that you don't quite love. And you learn to make a distinction between them. And if there is something that you love or need, but you're not quite good at, then you look for those who are good in those areas. But we're talking about hobbies, so let's stick to hobbies because these are the things that actually get to help us understand what our strengths are, what our gifts, talents, abilities, and capabilities are. So what do you notice again? We meet, we greet, we overcome what? Blind spots. And so when you come into a love relationship, what do you notice? There's a common thread. In all these areas, you would agree with me that you had to invest time and energy. You had to put in effort. You had to believe in yourself. You had to be selfless. You had to be vulnerable. You had to be prepared to fall and to fail in order to pick yourself up and to rise a lot stronger, bigger, and better. That's the expression I love to use. But then isn't it ironical that we expect our relationships, our friendships, let's start with friendships. See, because there is no love relationship without friendship. That's a myth. See, because friendship is the thing that makes you realize, it helps you understand the other person. And how do you understand the other person? Through communication. And as you communicate, when you realize that you're dealing with someone who shares the same values as you do, now that is communication working, because you then get to define, refine, streamline, and adopt these values together in one accord. And that is how the two become one. So Communication is that thing that takes away the blind spots of a relationship and helps two people navigate that relationship and take it to destination. The difference between this journey and every other journey is the following. Whereas you jump into a car and you're moving from point A to point B, and when you get to point B, you think you have arrived. Well, you don't realize that's just the beginning of another journey, because you got there for a reason and there was a purpose behind that reason. Education is the same thing. You start, you have a target. It could be a certificate. You get to the end of that calling, you get to the end of that journey, and you think you've arrived. Then you realize, oh no, that was just the beginning. That's just the thing that allowed someone out there to open the door up for you to go in and actually start the journey. See, because you realize after you've graduated from school that on the job, literally nothing you did back at school helps you in real time. It's almost like you have to go and learn everything from scratch, bespoke, in order to serve and meet and greet the needs of the clients that your customer, or sorry, that your organization or company or outfit serves. So, communication, blind spots. We circle back. Did you want to say something?
I was going to ask you, everybody talks about communication. I mean, this is not something people haven't heard, never heard. Why do so many people have so much trouble? They talk to each other, don't they?
Yes, they do, Divine. They talk to each other, and that is the mistake we sometimes make. So it's called communication, which means, let's define communication for starters. Communication is 90% listening and 10% talking. So if you're not listening, there's the adage that says you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should use them in that proportion. Listen at least twice as much as you speak. See, because otherwise you come into a communication, a dialogue with answers. You come into a dialogue thinking you know it all, and you come into that dialogue providing solutions to a problem that has not been defined, and one that you do not even understand or do not begin to understand. Why do I say so? It's because, Divine, we tend, unfortunately, to see the world not as it is. Rather, we see the world as we are. So if I come into a conversation, because that's what communication should really be all about, feedback and counter feedback, with more listening than talking. Otherwise, I will end up talking at you as opposed to talking to you. And if I'm talking to you, I should ideally be talking to you through the filter of talking with you. In which case, I'm not instructing you. So that's what a conversation is really all about. People think talking is the beginning of communication. No, it doesn't even begin to define communication. See, because if you're talking and you're not verbal elating, if I talk and you're not listening, all you're doing is waiting for me to finish so you can say what you had to say. That's the beginning of conflict, because we talk past and we walk past each other, but we do not communicate. So it is important that we understand that communication is not talking. Communication has got several building blocks. For two people to communicate, there's got to be a subject. What are we talking about? Do we agree that at this point in time, the subject that we are approaching or broaching is top or highest in our list of priorities? Am I having a conversation because I want my needs and my selfish interests met, and I will not settle until those are met. So it's important that we define what we mean by communication. See, because you could have someone saying, oh, well, I've tried my best. Say, okay, cool. What did you do? Well, I've told her or I've told him what to do. I've told him how this thing is supposed to go down for everything to be just fine. And they just wouldn't listen. Now, if they're not listening, it's because there is something in there that they can see that you can't see. Again, we talked about blind spots. And this is the essence. This is the core of the matter. We talked about blind spots. If you have told me how to fix this thing and it doesn't seem to be working, is there a chance that I'm seeing something that you can't see? And this thing could be a pitfall down the line.
Coach BK, I have attended a lot of weddings, and it's all about how this is great. The couple is, the groom or the bride, beautiful, handsome. Nobody is talking about potential pitfalls. Nobody is talking about the techniques in handling conflicts. Believe right from the word go, set up ourselves for failure, sir.
From the word go, do we set up ourselves for failure? So it begs the question, beggars believe. I guess the wedding is not the place where we want to start asking those questions. I guess from the point where these two people became friends, that is the point at which we want to start asking the questions. Setting up, we only set up ourselves for failure when we do not realize what marriage is all about. When we don't realize what relating and verbal elating and connecting is really all about. When we don't understand where we're going with that, the whys and the wherefores. Only at that time are we setting ourselves up for failure. Two people who don't have a clue about relationships have never had a relationship, but they get into a relationship understanding that they're not going to bring with them any of the baggage or the luggage that they carry from their past. If they come understanding that they will be consumed and subsumed by the other person, and they will give it their all to ensure that they meet and greet the needs of the other person in the relationship, in the connection, then they'll be just fine. The only time we set ourselves for failure is when we bring ego into the relationship, when we fail to define the relationship. I'm assuming when we talk about love here, see, Conrad, when we talk about love here, I would generalize it. I won't even leave it just to marriage. It could be love between siblings, love between friends, love between couples. What does it really mean? But then let's go back to love. I always want us to back pedal or paddle. See, because the very words that we use are containers that define the situations, that provide answers to the questions that we ask. What is love, Divine? See, love is that thing that creates, procreates, it gives, it forgives, and it is infinitely patient. So what is love again? Love will create. It will procreate. It will give. It will forgive. These are the only things that love knows how to do.
If you're not married to a virgin and fear exists these days, chances are that you are in a relationship or you are about to enter a relationship with somebody who has had some sort of experience. Now, you talked about people bringing into a current relationship the past baggage. How is that a problem in communication? Or how could it be a problem in communication?
Yes, when you bring your baggage, everything that you bring with
communication and or trust.
Yes, and please remind me, because I'd like for us to talk about trust. In fact, I'll just make a note in bold: trust. So how is your past a hindrance in and within the tenets of any relationship? You see, let's take a married couple. They come together, they have a house, and usually the objective or the immediate goal is to convert that house into a home. For you to do that, you have to agree on so many things. It means both of you will have to take the back seat in so many different areas. It doesn't matter who chooses who is the leader. Of course, the man always leads. But you would realize that in this whole gambit, you're going to have to give and take. You will have to be sensitive to the other person's needs. You will have to be present and show up when you engage. And I mean 100% showing up, where you give the other person 100% attention. They feel heard and understood. Now, what happens when you're dealing with someone who is coming into a relationship with trauma? Someone who's traumatically compromised. Someone who's come out of life, or life has dealt them situations that have taught them that in life you have to survive. What does survival mean? Now, every action, every relationship, every step we take, every word that comes out of our mouths either builds us or it breaks us. It makes us stronger or it makes us weaker. It puts us in a position where we realize we are empowered, and our role is to create an environment that is conducive enough to empower others. Or it makes us and turns us into victims. Now, let's take the person who comes into a relationship feeling victimized. The extreme case would be your typical narcissist who believes everything is about them. They can't take correction, because if you correct them, you are telling them they're not good enough. You're undermining them. They are that sensitive. They are that volatile. They are a bit of a landmine. And they have a checklist of all the people and all the things that have hurt them in their past, the things that have shaped them into who they are today. You see, we're all made up of neurons and electrical impulses, and it is these impulses that fire and wire together in different situations to cause us to behave, react, engage in certain ways, depending on what is happening. So if I'm coming from a situation, I'm coming from an environment where certain things meant certain things to me. If you looked at me a certain way, if you talked to me a certain way with a certain tone of voice, it meant certain things. Because in my abusive set of circumstances, that's what I saw, and that is the only thing I saw. I never got to realize that someone could be so frustrated with me because they were trying to empower me and I just couldn't see it. Now, guess what? When your spouse or the person you're in a relationship with does that to you, reminds you of any of these triggers, what do? You shut down and you put on your armor and you're ready for war. Don't forget, it's not done intentionally. It just kicks in as a reflex action and a response.
Coach BK, what do you do? And that's a question I have texted to me. What do you do with somebody who is unwilling to take correction? Somebody with such a thin skin, the slightest mildest correction you make inflame the situation. How do you handle that kind of person in a relationship?
How do you deal with volatile people? Same question. Let's take the extreme case. How do you handle a narcissist? Someone who's all about them. Someone who wants to know that they're doing great. The answer is simple. Give them a reputation to live up to. What do I mean by giving them a reputation to live up to? We all have needs, and every behavior that we exhibit. In fact, let me start by saying, everything that we do has got positive intent. Positive in the sense that we're looking for some kind of gratification, see, because life is split 2 lanes. There's pain and there's pleasure. We go on in life. We run around in life trying to avoid pain while trying to maximize on pleasurable experiences, gratifying experiences. It just goes wrong because sometimes, most of the time, we don't get it right. There is short-term pain, long-term gain, and short-term gain, long-term pain. We need to be able to make a distinction between these two. But then let's circle back and come to the question. I talked about giving that person a reputation to live up to, and I plugged in the whole question of needs and how we meet them. So we meet our needs in positive ways, we meet our needs in negative ways. First things first. If you know that the only reason someone is behaving the way they're behaving is because they're coming from a place of fear, it's because there are only two primary emotions in life. There is love, which is all-empowering, all-encompassing. That is the power, light. It is who we are. It creates, it procreates, it gives, it forgives. That is all that love knows how to do. Respect, it is infinitely, comes with infinite patience. That is pure love. Fear, on the other hand, and anything that is driven by fear is a thing that creates a void within us, because we go through life seeking to avoid painful situations. We're not motivated by the difference that we want to make, serving a purpose that is bigger than the self, because that is the only way we find fulfillment, when we find that thing that when we do, it becomes its own reward. And any financial gain that we get off the back of it is an added extra. That is the definition of fulfillment. And that is what brings that joy that is internal. The joy that doesn't come from anything that is happening outside of you. It comes from what is happening and going on inside of you that no one can take.
Coach BK, I just got a text from a viewer. What are some of very practical examples how somebody who had undergone some sort of bad experience, how would that person tend to behave in a new relationship?
So it's different. So it's a good question. What are some practical, so the question, if I understand correctly, what are some practical examples of how to deal with someone who's coming from a dark place? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes. And what are some of the examples, some practical examples of baggages brought from the past into a current relationship?
Okay. What are some of the examples? You were neglected as a child. You were abandoned as a child. All you saw growing up was war and terror at home. These would be practical examples. See, because when you find yourself in these situations, you have to adopt and you have to adjust. You have to adjust. You have to adopt, adapt, and adjust. Again, some people internalize these, keep them within them, and they are poorly adjusted in society. See, because if you're adjusting and adapting in a bad way, and there's no one to correct you, then you internalize all of that, and it becomes your survival mechanisms. It becomes the way you deal with life. If you see life in one way, everything you come across is a nail, and you are the hammer. So any situation you find yourself is, if you find yourself in, you feel threatened by. And when you are threatened by that, and why would you feel threatened by that particular experience? Because it reminds you of pain. And what do we want to do? What do we seek in life? We all seek to avoid any situation that is painful. So pain automatically triggers stress, duress, and distress. And before we know it, anxiety sets in. And when we're anxious, we really can't be our true selves, because we are in survival mode.
Here is a question from, a statement from a viewer. And by the way, you can dial the number 240-603-7367. 240-603-7367. And we will be live, hot live on the broadcast. The statement is, and this is a gentleman, he says whenever he is with his wife in a discussion, especially on contentious issues, The woman says, I'm not in the mood for this. Whatever. What is happening in this situation?
So who says, sorry, who says they're not in the mood for this, whatever?
Woman.
Sorry?
The woman.
The woman says she's not in the mood for this, whatever. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. I'm going to have to. Typically, I would need a bit of context. So let me see if I've understood it. I'll just play back the question. So this gentleman says, whenever he wants, he's in a conversation, whenever he engages his wife in conversation and they're dealing with a sensitive issue, I believe, she goes, she's not in the mood for this, whatever. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So the very first question I would ask is, are you sure? So when you get into an engagement in a conversation like that, I'm assuming there is something you both need to reach consensus on. There are two things. Before you talk about a subject, any subject, is she ready? How was it introduced? Did you create an environment that was conducive, that was receptive for her to be able to show up? You see, because that thing that you thought about 2 weeks ago and you thought, well, was resolved because she woke up the following day and treated you the way she normally did, served you your breakfast, served your lunch, asked you how your day at work went. See, that whole thing has not been resolved yet. See, because she didn't get her say. So it's very easy for women especially to bring baggage, to bring stuff that happened in the past into a conversation that you're dealing with at present, especially if she never felt heard, listened to, and or understood. You see, because by and large, there's male energy and there's female energy. Female energy, and I use male and female energy deliberately because sometimes you have men with the female energy, and sometimes you have women exhibiting the male energy. The expression we use sometimes is, she's the one wearing the trousers. That's because there's male and female energy. Just as in with genes, there's the male and there's the female chrome. So the question you want to ask yourself now, female energy usually wants to relate, engage, exchange energies, and build synergies. It wants to connect. It wants to feel you. What does male energy typically do? Male energy is about reason and logic, cut and dried, left and right. It's black or it's white. Female energy does shades of gray. And you have to go in there, pick it apart. You have to get into the nitty-gritty. You need to do the small talk. Don't just come and start firing like Rambo. You shoot everybody and then you ask questions later and you expect to make progress. It doesn't work that way. It will not work that way. And then when you say something, because typically when anybody, it's not just a woman, when anybody says, most often the times, instead of asking questions, we question our partners. That's beautiful. So again, that was so beautiful. I lost my train of thought. Let me see if I can catch myself. Divine, can you remind me where I was? Because I was just going with flow. I was talking about energy, right?
Correct.
I was talking about female energy and the fact that it wants to connect, it wants to relate, and it sees things sometimes in shades of gray, and you need to go in there, pick it apart, the nitty-gritty. Sometimes female energy just wants to talk about everything and nothing and not necessarily get anywhere. So the questions are, A, what needs to happen before you get into conversation? Have we created an environment that is conducive enough for the other person to show up? Had we introduced the topic? Is it a sensitive topic? Is it a topic that had contention? Had something similar happened in the past? And you were repeating a cycle that you have repeated in the past? Because if this is something that happens all the time, the chances are she does not feel heard. she does not feel listened to, she does not feel understood. And when a woman doesn't feel any of those things, it's because she doesn't feel loved. So it's very important for us to realize that when that conversation is not going right, it's because we did not create an environment that was conducive enough to get our partner to engage. And excuse my French, but it's usually the time when we need to maybe shut up and ask them if they have something to say and let them talk.
I just got a reaction on my phone. A lady saying that each time they are in a conversation, the atmosphere is like two lawyers in a court of law. Each person struggling or trying to outsmart the other. I'd like you to react to that, sir.
Yes, no, absolutely. Let's start by defining a relationship. What is a relationship? What is marriage? Marriage is a contract between two people. This enterprise stipulates one thing, that you both come together and you accept that in your journey, on your journey to enlightenment. So let me say that again. If I decide I'm going to take on this life journey with you, it's because I've looked at you and I've decided that I will be vulnerable with you. So you can identify, show me my blind spots. And when I discover those blind spots, because you can see them, the chances are you do not have those blind spots. And if we understand how we complement each other, see, because the only reason I'd fall in love with you is because you have got abilities, capabilities, gifts, and talents that I do not have. That's what I fall in love with in you. And that's the same reason you fall in love with me, because I have got abilities, I've got talents, I have got certain ways, powers, so to speak, that you do not have. When we confuse our differences, I'll say this very carefully. When we confuse our differences and see them as threats because we stopped being vulnerable, it means we stopped trusting each other. I'm so glad you asked this question, because I said I was going to talk about trust, so it leads us very nicely into that conversation. What does trust mean? When I say I don't trust you, it's a fallacy. It means absolutely nothing. It's just total tosh. See, because I don't trust myself, sweetheart. There are lots of things that you do, and there are lots of things that I do, and there are lots of things that Divine here does. And he would go and he would ask himself the question, oh wow, did I really do that? Was that really me? Oh my goodness, I could have done this a lot better. I'm better than this. I need to be more in touch with my higher self. So if you don't know yourself enough to trust yourself, how can you get over yourself to trust someone else? Of course, they will let you down. Am I saying we should never trust? No, not at all. See, because I don't know you who asked the question, but I trust you 100%. How could I say such a thing? It's based on my definition of trust. See, my definition of trust goes something like this. I trust that whatever it is you do has got positive intent. I trust that you've got my best interests at heart. So if you did not have my best interests at heart, you would never have married me in the first place. So you had all the best intentions. And if I know that you've got my very best interest at heart, then I trust that whatever it is you're doing is to help me grow. So I will have the patience, the tenacity, the temerity, the steadfastness, the fortitude to hear you out, to be vulnerable in your presence, and to deal with whatever it is you throw at me, making sure that I communicate and I do not misunderstand. So it's not about point scoring. See, because when we confuse our spouse for the enemy outside, because when we're out there in the real world, we have to fight. We have to win when we engage. That becomes a pattern. It becomes a routine. which we bring home. And if we don't leave it at the door, if we don't remind ourselves that, hey, this is my sanctuary, this is a place where I come to be motivated, to be inspired, to be filled up. This is the place where I come to rest and to lie on my laurels. This is the place where I come to give love, to torture those around me with love so they can find themselves to be able to engage as well, where we exchange energies and build synergies. Now, when that is not happening, conflict arises and you start doing the cross talk, seeking to win.
How do you realize situations that trust gets abused, and when it is abused once? Like I was listening to this pastor, he says it takes a little thing to break trust, and it might take your whole life for you to work to build it back. So isn't it as a result of abuse of trust that people just don't trust their partners enough?
Yes, that is the myth. That is the lie we tell ourselves. So let's talk about love. For those who have got kids, I'm sure you'd agree with me that when your child throws a tantrum, you correct that child. Child wants candy and it's crying and kicking a fuss and kicking dust. Do you just give it candy to keep it quiet? No, we don't. We put that child in the straights and narrows, and sometimes depending on what part of the world we are in, we pat it on the back, on the butt, to put it mildly. But the whole idea is short-term pain, long-term gain. Now, what do we do with our spouses? You would notice that when we've just gone past the honeymoon period, everything goes. When he throws a tantrum, you're like, no, honey, don't worry, it's okay, I love you. There are certain things, certain bad behaviors that we aid and abate down the line, and we don't realize we're doing these things. We're doing it because we think we love them. My question to those of us who do that is, if you will correct your child when he or she throws a tantrum because you love them, and you massage your husband or your wife when they throw a tantrum or do something wrong, can you claim to love these two people? I guess the excuse we usually use is, I did it to save the peace. So we're looking at what? What are we looking at? Instant gratification, short-term gain, long-term pain. No, your job is not to create the peace. Or, well, yes, create the peace, be a peacemaker. But to be a peacemaker, you have to be ruthlessly objective and passionately caring and loving in your ruthless objectivity. You see, we confuse love with weakness. We don't understand the power of love. We all believe in something. I believe in God. And I believe when God says, love, vengeance is mine, is because when you love and truly love, vengeance goes right through your love and meets the other person at their point of need. Love doesn't mean you give them whatever it is they want. No, it means you're responsible for every action you take, and you hold me accountable for everything that I do. You call me out gently, caringly, lovingly when I go wrong. Otherwise, how do I grow? See, because I'm sure you'd agree with me that your husband will not hesitate to call you out when you do something wrong. Sometimes he calls you out just for the fun of it. You haven't even done anything wrong. He's holding you accountable, and rightfully so. So why don't you return the favor and help him grow? So do we lose trust? No, we do not lose trust. When we say, oh, I lost trust because it was abused, no. You aided, I aided, and I abated that abuse until a point where it became unsustainable and I could not reverse it. See, because trust has nothing to do with the other person. Trust is everything to do with what I will accept, what I will not accept, what is good, as in, I know we need to take the next question, and I can see you're bubbling to ask a question.
Absolutely.
There's one thing I really want. There's one thing I really. Okay, it has gone off my mind. If it comes, I will. So go right ahead.
That's okay. That's okay. You said sometimes when communication goes sour, it's because one person, maybe the man did not provide or produce the right atmosphere for that conversation. Becky, how do you do this? You buy a gift for madam or for a girlfriend or for a boyfriend before you bring in some controversy to discuss? How do you use that conducive environment, sir?
Absolutely. So everybody will know what works for their spouse. No, and usually it shouldn't involve anything else. An invitation. So life's not about what we do. Life's about how we do what we do. If I can show you that this conversation we're about to have is serving the best interest of the connection that you and I share. See, because in every relationship, there are three entities. There's you, there's me, and there's the connection. That connection, I'm sure we would agree, takes a life of its own, and it demands to be fed. It demands to be taken care of. Now, if you're not willing to engage, and this cuts across both parties, if you're not willing to engage because you think you're not in a good mood, all you're saying is your feelings are more important than the connection, and your feelings are more important than I am. So what are you doing here? You're talking about your feelings. What exactly? Who owns who? Do you own your feelings, or do your feelings own you? You see, we are the sum total of the things that we think about, the conversations that we have on our mind, in our minds. The things that we think about will show up in our body. They will be printed in our body, and these become our actions, and they translate into our actions. So you ask simple questions, you see, because everybody wants to be loved. There are primary needs in life. We want to feel safe. We want to be safe, secure, and comfortable. We want to be respected. We want to be loved, and we want connection. Simply ask the question, throw it back at the person. Okay, I would like to have this conversation. I'd like for us to talk about this thing. Do you agree it is important for us going forward? Do you see this as an important topic or subject? This is how it will help you. This is how it will take us from point A to point B. I know I can't do this alone. I need you on this journey. I can see you're not in a very good place. Is there something else we need to deal with before we could come to a place and headspace where we would be able to handle and engage in this capacity? You see, when you ask questions like this, which show that you care, see, because nobody cares how much you know until they know that you care. So but then if you come with this haughty attitude, talking down at someone. So you mentioned this thing the other day. If you want to talk about it, let's talk about it now, because I don't really have a lot of time. Let's just do this and get it over and done with. Seriously. And we sometimes forget that communication has nothing to do with words. The words are just containers. They don't mean anything. If I say, for instance, I love you, and I say, I love you, I use the exact same words. But body language is what actually communicates, is 90% of the communication. So when communication is not going right, don't focus on what it is you said. Think about how you behaved, because your interlocutor is picking up on those signals. Nonverbal communication is what it is called, and it is always a lot louder than the words that we actually put out there. Yes, Divine.
It is not what you say that is very important. It is how you say it, if I got you right. Coach BK, bad communicators, can you detect that before getting into a relationship? Is it learned behavior that people just acquire or find themselves in after they have actually entered into a relationship? Or listen, if you are a woman, I wanted to date you for marriage, is it possible I can pick up some indicators? Are there indicators that people can pick up before they even say, yes, I do? If yes, what are they?
Oh, yes. The very first one I say, I'll tell anyone. It doesn't matter whether it's male or female. Remember, I talked about male and female energy. We all have needs that we want met. Some people are used to meeting their needs by throwing tantrums. If someone grew up in an environment where whenever they wanted something, all they had to do was make a noise or throw something or shout really loud. As a child, you scream and your problems are met. Now, that is utopic. That is seventh heaven. That's like living in the clouds. Who don't want that? All you have to do is scream and your needs are met. If you grew up in a household like that and you were spoiled rotten, you will translate that to your husband. When you want something, you go quiet, you go shtum. Or the man, same thing. He wants something, he goes quiet, he goes shtum. He puts up or puts out an attitude. And then you have to start testing the waters, trying, feeling guilty. You try to fix a problem that you did not create. That is one scenario. What's the other scenario? Somebody who's never wrong. It doesn't matter what happens, you're always at fault. And of course, they're eloquent enough to twist everything and make it look like you are the dark and the sinister one. See, because anyone who points a finger needs to grow. See, because I would not be pointing a finger at you. It takes two to run a relationship, simply because if you did something, I must have done something to make you behave that way. And if I were correcting you, I shouldn't be correcting you to impart guilt. I should be correcting you in a way that you feel empowered to grow and be your own person. So anyone who's not doing that, anyone you're in a relationship with and you go more than 2 days, more than a day without talking because they are in a mood, those are telltale signs. If they can be that person before marriage, they only get worse down the line when you get married to them. And so these are things that need to be challenged. See, because the question I always ask myself is, we have a misunderstanding today, something that communication can regulate, fix, make us understand each other even better, strengthen the connection and our bond, build synergies between the two of us. It has to wait 6 weeks, sometimes 6 months, because you're angry. See how much time we wasted. The next couple who are dealing with stuff, guess where they would be in 6 months while both of you were playing hanky-panky, wasting time, being unresourceful to each other? No. If you love that person, yes, you can change them. And how do you change people? Be whatever it is you want them to be, and they will turn over backwards to meet you at your point of need. They will subject themselves to your whims and caprices, provided what you're doing is driven by positive intent.
I just got a question here. Again, you can dial 24, this is the phone. You can dial 240-603-7367. 240-603-7367. The question I have here is, I'm going to read it the way it's been sent to me by text. Coach, in social media, particularly Facebook, you have couples that come on giving the impression that they're in paradise. It's a union. Is there any such thing like what they want to project on Facebook? Because he says, whenever my wife sees that she comes back home and starts attacking, I'm not like that guy, I'm not like that guy. What's your comment on this?
I love the French expression, combler le vide. So a lot of the time, we overcompensate for the life that we do not have, which is why we would project it on the outside. Those who are truly, and I know there are exceptions, so there's a disclaimer here. There are some exceptions, but typically the things that we do not have, we tend to project so we can fill the void that we feel on the inside. And I know it is sad. I had an example which has gone off my mind, but if it comes, I will run with it. Oh yes, I've had the example. We all breathe, right? Or take the example of me taking a snapshot in front of a yacht and posting it, splashing it on Facebook. Why would I do that? Typically because that's not my normal lifestyle. Bill Gates, who owns airships, would not pose in front of his yacht and put it on Facebook, say, look at me. No, it won't happen. Because to him, it's just like that old banger that you drive to work on a daily basis. That's the way he sees it. Something that takes him from point A to point B, point blank. I'm just talking about those who can afford those things. Take another example, breathing. You and I breathe, right, every day. When is the last time you patted yourself on the back, or you went on Facebook and you said to the world, hey, look at me, I'm breathing? But the truth is, breathing is the most important thing you and I will ever do, because if we stop breathing for half an hour, if we're not trained to do that, stop breathing for half an hour and it is game over. We can meet our creator and determine what it is we're going to be, or what we will be doing and who will be next. So a lot of what we see on Facebook is make believe, and that's exactly what it is. And unfortunately, it is a cycle. It's a bit like marketing. La mode. Comment est-ce qu'on décide?
Well,
How do you decide? So let me just finish this. How do we decide what becomes the mode? Somebody sells something by virtue of marketing. Somebody picks it up, sells the trend, people buy it, and everyone wants to look that way in order to be somebody. So someone goes out there, does that fake thing, and trust me when I tell you, I have dealt with lots of people who are going through really traumatic situations and all circumstances, and they put these pictures out. I have seen those scenarios as well. And sometimes it's just a coping mechanism. It's not showing off. It is doing something to get some kind of gratification. If I can't get the gratification that I need from the person that I'm in love with, let the likes on Facebook and the high fives and the emojis give me the thing that I need. Because remember what I said, every behavior has got positive intent. So we're not about judging anyone. No. We should rally around those people, especially the ones who do it and that's not really their lifestyle. Because let's face it, I mean, I've got shy of 3,000, 4,000 friends on Facebook. Are they really my friends? So there are lots of things that we need to redefine and restructure in order to find our feet on the ground. We live sometimes in the cloud. The virtual world becomes so real, it makes the real world virtual. And we need to be very careful about that. Now, while I have no shares in this, I'm going to say, go watch The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix. And you will understand what social media is and how it is designed to take you over. It is a great tool, but when it becomes a master, it is worse than the devil.
I like that line. How do we are 1 hour into the show. What do you tell someone who is having trouble getting over or getting past their past experiences, which inadvertently they bring into new relationships, which they got in hoping would be better than the previous? How do you advise them? I mean, what do you tell that kind of person? What do you tell them to put that behind them? By the way, I want to thank Bill Deng, who is watching from Juba in South Sudan, and the others, Bell Sonke, and so on. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So we're talking about someone who feels like their past relationships have gotten them in dire straits. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes. What do you tell the person who inadvertently, just unconsciously imports from past experiences into new experiences, when they got into the new experience hoping that they're better than what they had previously?
So I will start by saying you need to work to discover, to find who you are. Because all I hear is you have become your past. You have become your experiences. Every life experience is a teacher. Let me just read that. So I like your disclaimer because there is so much we don't know and make too many assumptions. That is absolutely true. Very, very true. That's why I always put a disclaimer. And I want to talk to that because when somebody, I hope you don't mind, Divine, because when someone puts up a comment like that, it's usually because they have been touched in a delicate place, or they feel for someone they know, and it could be a bit of a sensitive or touchy subject. Brilliant. So let me just read that again. I like your disclaimer because there is so much we don't know and make too many assumptions about others. We are on social media. Okay.
And he goes, because a lot of people actually live in the virtual space. That's Shingante. Thank you, sir, for watching. Appreciate it.
Because lots of people actually live in that virtual space. And I guess it's a bit of a double-edged sword there, because when he qualifies it, when you qualify it by saying lots of people actually do live in the virtual space, how does that translate in that physical space? So maybe I should just leave the comment alone, because initially I thought it was going in one sense, but the second part of it actually makes my point even more, because living in the virtual world is like having a virtual reality, which does not always translate in the physical. And why would I say so?
Question. Let's get back to the question. If you did not marry a virgin,
Yes.
chances that you got into a relationship with somebody who had previous experiences.
Yeah.
Now, while some people can get over those past experiences, good or bad, some people stay in there while in the new relationship. What do you do with that? What's the advice you give that kind of person?
I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. Life is about finding who we are. And the people, places, situations, and circumstances that befall us, the curveballs that life throws at us, are all designed to do one thing: to bring out who we are, to bring to the surface our fears so we can deal with them, to bring to the surface our strengths so we can grow them, become enlightened and self-actualize. Now, for most people who get stuck in this rut, there are two things that are at play. They have learned how to cope with abusers, and so they are attracted to abusers because that is the frequency they tune into. You see, because we are all spiritual beings, and you will notice that people who are happy and jovial and bubbly usually attract like, and people who are miserable, always sad, pull long faces, always attract similar. They would attract people who really can add a whole lot to their experience, or worse still, they repel those who can actually add something to their lives. So what do I say to such a person? Go back to your past. Look at those things that happen. You want to break that cycle. What is it that you've been doing over and over that you continue to do? What is it about you that expects the other person to show up in order for you to be happy? See, because what I'm hearing is you get into this new relationship and your focus is, I'll do everything for this not to fail. And so when it starts going wrong, you start compromising. And when I say compromising, I mean you are compromising on your values. See, because we have certain things we should never compromise on. If you're baking a cake, if you and I are baking a cake, and we bake the cake and it's beautiful, at the end of which you say, oh, you want icing, and I say, no, I don't do icing. I'll happily compromise if you insist. Who cares about icing? It's the cake that is important. Or I may like icing, and you go, no, you prefer pink icing. I want black. No, I'm not going to split hairs over that or about that. Sure, whatever. Let's go with it. I love you. But if you were to say, let's put salt instead of sugar in this cake, or let's bake it, half done, half baked, and then we take it out and serve it. No, I'm not compromising on something like that, because then we want to call that something else. It's not cake anymore. Same thing with life. There are certain values that we should have, that we should imbibe within us, because these values are our satellite navigation system. They are our bearings. When we compromise on them, life punishes us. And how does it punish us? It punishes us with the people, through the people around us, who will use and abuse us. They will explore and exploit that weakness until we plug the gap. So let's talk, whoever you are. And for you, reach out. No fees, no cost. Reach out, let's deal with that.
We, at some point, will have to end this broadcast. I see you have so much to say, Coach BK, but somebody's asking themselves, how do you get into effective communications? What are those roadblocks that you should clear off the way in order to communicate effectively with the person you are in love with? Give them something to take home with.
Fear. Remove the fear. I started by saying we see the world as we are, not as it is. Listen to understand. Don't listen to correct. Don't listen to override or overrule. Learn to be vulnerable. If you can't be vulnerable in front of the person you're talking to, and be open in communication, let them know how you feel, what it is that they did to make you feel the way you felt. If you can't do that, that usually is the beginning of that recipe for disaster. And if they can't reciprocate, then you will always struggle with your partner. If they think they are too big to be weak, if they think telling you they're struggling with something is a weakness, then there is a part of them you will never really access. And it also means there are times you will hurt them without knowing, and they will retort. And when they do, you won't realize, you won't know what they were reacting to. You may be thinking they're reacting to what it is you both are talking about, when they're settling scores of something that happened way in the past, and they're just trying to put you in your place. Trouble is, when you find yourself in that particular situation or scenario, you're trying to deal with what it is that is at hand. And the more you try, the less progress you make. Why? They're just trying to put you in your place. So stop and ask, is there something else? Because this thing that I'm doing here, I had done before and you praised me. How is it wrong? Because this is why I'm doing it. This is where I want us to go with this. And you're finding faults with it. Have I hurt you in some other way that I do not know? So always understand that people are not always comfortable. They don't feel comfortable telling you the truth about what it is that hurts, how they felt undermined, how they felt unloved. See, because it's crybaby. And typically for male energy, it is weak to tell you, you hurt me. Excuse me, I'm strong. I'm the macho one here. I'm the one wielding power and authority. How can I be weak? And some people get twitchy, touchy, and sensitive when you correct them. You see, because to them, male energy wants to feel needed. So whatever it is you're going to do, always make sure you start with something positive. Let him or her feel needed, important. Let them feel loved. That's how you open up communication lines. We all want to hear something positive. That is why we would clamor around Facebook for that one like. And when we hear bidding, we go rush to go see who's done what is there, what's the goodie that I can cash in on. If Facebook does that to us, how much more the one that we actually love and have a relationship with, a physical, hardcore, solid, grounded relationship with, not a virtual relationship. So be the person you seek. Be the change that you aspire towards. Be the change that you seek, and your world will bend over backwards to meet you at your point of need.
Here's what Major India Shingante says: is there a trap in trying to conform too much to what others or society defines, risking one's true identity? This question is because in compromise, some may think you should have certain values, whereas you have completely different values that have not compromised at all.
I'll take again the example of a nail and a hammer. But before I come to that nail and a hammer, I'll say this. In life, everybody wants to be an individual. See, because we're all unique. No two people are the same. We all have different abilities and capabilities. And our experiences are the things that shape us into the tool that we eventually become. Because no two people see and or read the same situation in the same way. No two people learn the same lessons from that same teacher. So we all have things that are unique to us. And we're all connected and united by universal values. Respect, love, patience. As in, you let people do them and be them, and you do you and be you. You see, because you would notice that when you find you and you operate in your space, like you say, the world usually would try to kick against you, and it starts with those who are closest to you. But then if you and your spouse know where you're going and it is working for you, let me take a contentious subject. Your wife earns 10 times more than you. And in your friend circle, they are like, oh my goodness, you need to put her in her place. How can she be earning? Oh, no. Anything that she does is a problem. You share it with them, and what they are saying is, oh, well, if she were not earning more than you, she would not be behaving that way. That's their value system. It's not yours. Is it working for the both of you? Can you plan your future? Does she listen to you when you correct, when you guide, and when you direct? You see, because again, we have different gifts and talents, and it is not these are gifts and talents that makes of us true leaders. It is how and to what extent we can submit and surrender those gifts and talents to a worthy cause. Something that serves a purpose that is bigger than the self, making a difference. So it may feel good, but the question we want to ask, is it good for us? And does it serve the greater good? Is the world around us better for the values that we share? Or is the world around us worse for those values that we share? Those are the questions you want to be asking. And now don't worry about what the world is doing. Because if the world had the answers, the world would not be as miserable a place as it is today.
Coach BK, what are you going to give people watching you now to take home on matters of trust? There is somebody as we speak about to get into a relationship. There's somebody as we talk in a relationship. And there's somebody so fed up they get off or get out of it. What's the message you have for these classes of people, sir?
It's the same message across the board. trust has nothing to do with me. You see, I will test you every way I can. Consider me the world. I will throw curveballs at you till kingdom come. Trust is about you. Trust is about being true to you. So when I say I trust you, it's because my values are solid enough and I will share them with you. I've got 3 values which encompass my values, mores, ethos, and the principles that guide me, that made me and make me who I am today. And I can proudly tell you that with these values, my relationships never go wrong because I either end up with friends or end up with acquaintances. Here's how my trust works. I will love you, first principle of value system. I will love you unconditionally. It doesn't matter what you do. Whether you jump, or you're doing a backflip, or you're doing a backslide, or you're moonwalking, I will love you. And I will create an environment where you can be you and be true to you. I will never judge you. So that's the first. The second principle that underpins what I define as trust is there is no taboo subject. We would discuss sacred things. So there is and there are no taboo subjects. If you and I are friends and we need to talk about your period because it is causing you stress, we should be able to talk about it as if we were talking about a common cold. That to me is trust. It goes hand in hand with being vulnerable. Why is this important? You will notice that the things that we call taboo are the places we never go. So if you've got a place in your soul, a closet that you never go to, what do you think will infest that closet? Of course, skeletons. That's where all your demons run to hide because they know they are a no-go area. All the things you're ashamed of, all the things you are afraid of, all the things you can't deal with. And by the way, remember that life happens on the other side of your fear. So if you can talk about those things and talk about them freely, I'll give you an example. I used to struggle with masturbation. Oh my goodness, I'm saying this to the world. Yes. But what are you going to do with that information? Absolutely nothing. Until I give you the power to use it against me. Until I go like this. But if I see it as something that I struggle with, overcame it, felt empowered, I was like, oh wow, look at me. And it has no hold over me. So you can't use it against me. I have to finish this. I have to finish this, Divine.
Go ahead.
So that is, yeah, okay, cool. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is if you have no taboo areas, then nothing and nobody has a hold over you. And if we as friends can talk about these things back and forth between and betwixt, our relationship will be so solid, it will be a friendship that is a counseling session, that is a therapeutic session, because it is imbibed and infused with love, unconditional. And that's what healing is all about. That's the 5th property of love that I forgot to highlight. Love creates, love procreates, love gives, forgives, and ultimately love, true love, heals. It will burn every pain to ashes. Now, that's my second principle. The third one is push for mutual growth. How does that work? I said I will never judge you, but if we share the same values, now if you're doing something, we ask the principal questions. Is this thing that you're doing empowering our connection, or is it sucking the life out of our connection? Is it making you and I a better person, or is it a bit selfish? And if it is selfish, if you say this is who you are, and we can see that what you're doing here is taking you in a different direction, what's going on there? If you claim you're an introvert and you don't talk very much, or you don't talk at all, I want to engage with you, you're completely unavailable. Is that not a bit selfish? What is it doing to me? I want to engage in communication so we can deal with things that are not working. And you say, oh, no, you're not ready. Again, where are you going with that? If you're not going to communicate, if you're dealing with someone who's not going to communicate, they're better off being an acquaintance until such a point as they are happy to communicate. Then you can embrace them again. So, first thing, unconditional love. Second thing, discuss sacred things, sacred subjects, no taboo subjects, no taboo areas. You go everywhere. Third principle, push for mutual growth, empowerment, development, enlightenment. And if you can do those three things, the people who need to reach you get to you through these three filters. If they can relate well with those three filters, they get to meet and greet you, and you can be vulnerable all you care, all you want, knowing whatever it is these people are doing, they're coming from a good place. And when they stop doing any one of these things, then you know they are taking a distance. That trust element, that they have stopped trusting themselves. It has nothing to do with you, because people usually deal with their darkness, with their problems, the things that they carry. If they allow those things to overwhelm them and you come close, the pain that they feel, that fire that is burning in them, will burn you. Right.
Coach Blakely, I will give you a minute and a half for a last word, and then there was something. I have a package for anyone celebrating their birthday today or those who celebrated their birthdays this week. Your last word in a minute and a half, sir.
My last word. What was the topic today? Communication, trust. So, it is a crazy world out there. At the same time, it is a beautiful world. And like I always say, life's about just one thing. Life's about discovering who we are, finding our true selves, our true identities. When we do that, we become our best selves. When we become our best selves, we develop that ability to communicate. We trust, we are open, we engage, and we make it our responsibility to create an environment that is conducive, an environment that is dynamic, an environment that favors the growth of others. You see, because when others grow in our presence, we grow in their midst. If my primary focus is taking care of you, then when you grow, I grow with you. And if we can all do that and define those tenets of communication, if we can imbibe communication, take communication as the one thing we can't afford not to have, it will work miracles in the relationships we have, the relationships we're about to forge, and the ones that we dream to forge. It doesn't matter who we're engaging with, whether at work, at home, or with self.
Thank you so much, Coach BK, connecting live from the beautiful city out in London. We appreciate you coming on Voices of Africa. I hope that some people got touched powerful enough to change course. And if after 90 minutes, we succeeded in changing the mindset or helping in the change of the mind of one couple or somebody about to get into a relationship, then we succeeded in our assignment. Thank you so much, Coach BK.
It's a pleasure. Good night.